So today, we're going to pull back the curtain and find out what really happens to our old electronics when we're done with them. And trust me, it's a journey that goes way beyond the recycling bin, into this really complex world designed to turn our old tech trash back into treasure.
I mean, we've all been there, right? You've got an old gadget, maybe a phone, a tablet, a laptop. It's a bit outdated, maybe the screen's cracked, and it's just sitting in a drawer somewhere. So what do you do with it? And look, this isn't just your problem. It's a massive, massive global challenge.
And believe me, the scale here is, well, it's mind-boggling. Just to give you an idea, back in 2019, a country like India generated over 3 million kilotons of this stuff, electronic waste or e-waste. Now, to put that number in perspective, that's like the weight of 300 Eiffel Towers in 1 year. That makes it the third largest producer in the world, and this particular kind of waste is growing faster than any other. It's a huge deal.
And here's the thing about all this e-waste, it's got this dual personality. On one hand, it's packed with hazardous materials that are seriously bad for our health and for the environment. But on the other hand, it's also a treasure chest, full of precious metals like gold, silver, and other valuable materials that can be recovered. It's the ultimate example of one person's trash being another person's treasure.
You know, for the longest time, we've been stuck in what's called a linear economy. It's super simple. We take resources from the earth, we make products, and then we just throw them away. It's a one-way street straight to the landfill. But there's this incredible alternative that's gaining traction, the circular economy. The whole idea here is to design waste out of the system from the beginning by keeping all those products and materials in a constant loop of reuse, repair, and recycling.
So, how do we actually do that? How do we make that circle happen? Well, the engine that powers this whole idea is something called reverse logistics. The best way to think about it is like the supply chain, but flipped completely backwards. Instead of getting new products to you, it's all about getting those old products back from you, so we can squeeze every last drop of value out of them.
Okay, so let's get into the nitty-gritty. How does the system actually work? I mean, it's not magic, right? It's a really carefully planned network with a few main ways to get our old stuff back where it needs to go.
You've probably seen this in action, even if you didn't know what it was called. Getting your device back is often called take-back, and it happens in a few common ways. You might drop it off at the store where you bought it. Sometimes you even get a little store credit. Or you might get a prepaid shipping label to mail it back. And of course, there's the classic route, taking it down to your local municipal collection center. Now, once they get this stuff, it doesn't just all go into one big shredder. Nope, there's actually a hierarchy, a pecking order, for getting the most value out of it. The absolute best-case scenario, the top priority is just direct reuse. If that can't happen, the next step is to refurbish or remanufacture it, basically making it good as new. If that's not possible, then it goes to recycling to break it down for its raw materials, and the very last resort is recovery, which could mean burning what's left to generate energy. The goal is always to keep things at the highest value possible for as long as possible.
All right, this all sounds great, right? A perfect circle. So, what's the catch? Why isn't every single gadget we own being perfectly looped back into the economy? Well, as you might have guessed, it pretty much comes down to a four-letter word: cost.
Yeah, let's not beat around the bush here. This whole reverse setup is seriously expensive. You're talking about huge investments to build collection centers, to pay for transportation all over the place, and to operate these high-tech recycling facilities. And here's the real kicker: it isn't always profitable.
And when you look at the biggest roadblocks, it's pretty clear. The number one issue? Yep, financial costs. But right behind that, you've got a lack of infrastructure and technology. And then, notice that third piece of the pie: low consumer awareness. I mean, you can build the most amazing system in the world, but it's totally useless if people don't know it exists or just don't bother to use it.
So, all this cost brings up a really big idea, something called the polluter pays principle. And it's basically what it sounds like, the idea that whoever creates the waste should help pay to manage it. Now, this could mean that the companies making the products build the cost of recycling into their prices, or it could mean that we, the consumers, pay a small fee. It's really about sharing the financial responsibility for a product's entire life, from cradle to grave, and hopefully back to the cradle again.
But that brings up a huge question, right? It gets into our heads. What actually makes us, you and me, willing to participate in this? And even more, what makes us willing to actually pay for recycling? It's not enough to just build this system. You have to understand the human side of the equation.
So what does the research tell us about our own psychology when it comes to this stuff? I mean, why would any of us agree to pay a fee to get rid of something we already own? The answer, it turns out, is way more complex than you might think.
Well, one study from 2022 looked into this and found that our willingness to pay is really driven by three key psychological factors. The first one is a bit of a mouthful: perceived behavioral control. All that really means is, do we feel like we actually have the know-how and ability to recycle properly? Second, there's awareness of consequences. Do we truly understand what happens, the bad stuff, if we don't recycle? And third, it comes down to our intention to recycle, just having that baseline desire to do the right thing in the first place.
And get this way of thinking is not the same everywhere, not even close. You look at one study from Malaysia and wow, over half the people were willing to pay a recycling fee. But then you look at a similar study in Bangladesh and that number just tanks, down to less than 10%. It's a really stark reminder of how much our local culture and our level of awareness can totally shape these decisions.
Okay, so here's where it all comes together. You've got the system, and you've got our psychology. Building all the trucks and facilities is only half the battle. The other half, which is just as important, is getting people like us to actually use it.
So let's boil it all down. What are the big things to remember here? First, the system exists. Reverse logistics is real, and it provides a path forward for all our old electronics. Second, this system has very real costs, and we have to figure out how to cover them. And third, and this might be the most important part, our mindset is the key. Our awareness, our understanding, and our intention to do the right thing, that's the fuel that makes this entire circular economy go.
And that leaves us with one last thing to think about. We always talk about making recycling easier, more convenient. And yeah, that's incredibly important. But is convenience actually enough? Or does the real change happen on a deeper level? Does it happen when we shift our perspective, when we stop seeing an old phone as a piece of junk and start seeing it as a bundle of resources just waiting to be used again? Maybe, just maybe, true recycling doesn't start in the bin. Maybe it starts right here in our minds.